It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey Not the Face with your host John Nash and your producer me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are looking at the status conference held for the UFC antitrust cases regarding the possible spoliation, however you prefer, by UFC officials. We are also discussing the MVP MMA card from top to bottom. We're going to go over the payouts. We're going to go over Jon Jones's comments about getting out of his contract. We're going to talk about the proposed second event by year's end. We're even going to talk about Nate Diaz's intent to keep fighting and Dana White's impeccable timing on announcing Conor McGregor's return fight. There's a whole shitload more. Yes, shitload is a real term. So, anyways, before we get into all these shitloads of topics, I'm going to ask that you pick up a paid subscription because, oh geez, no, every episode is got a paywall in it, you know? You get the first half free, but the second half you got to pony up a little cheddar for. So, on that fine note, how the heck are you, John? Are you ready to talk shitloads about MVP MMA?
There's a lot of scatological comments here going on that I'm not very comfortable with, so I guess I'm ready. You should tell you though, I got punched today by a homeless lady. So
What?
That was my big day. Yeah, so I'm a little beat here. No, I mean I felt bad for her. I was on my way to pick up some food for lunch, and apparently I hit the crosswalk signal, and she did not like that because she told everybody not to use the crosswalk signal, I guess. So she ran up and punched me, and the thing I had to say is I was pretty amazed because her punch was actually pretty good. I was pretty impressed by that. But she is I mean, I couldn't get upset. She is a person obviously in complete mental disarray. Not doing well. So that was, what are you going to do about that? The city will not, I don't believe people like that should be, living on their own, on the street in their own filth, talking to themselves, but there's not much you can do about it.
You know, Bernie Sanders has proposed that a 5% annual tax on billionaires go into effect. And what he wants to do with that 5% is basically end homelessness, end hunger, clean up our water supply, do this, do that. I mean, it would literally fund everything that we want to do. But then there's this administration.
Well, I mean, I don't think just this administration. Very few are going to support a billionaire's tax because billionaires have a lot of money. But even then, I mean, in this particular situation, I don't know if it would help much because you have to change other laws. We need conservatorship laws and stuff because you cannot put these people under institutional care. I mean, you also might not want to put them under like the old institutions we have. Hopefully the money would be spent on building better institutions. But I think it shouldn't be this way, but at the same time, there's not the simple fix. I don't know. Both sides of the aisle on this issue kind of bug me because the conservatives, or I should say conservative friends I have, are like load them up in trains and ship them out to the desert. And I'm like, well, all right, Himmler. And then my more progressive friends are like, they're not hurting anyone. And I'm like, well, this person's getting hurt. Their life is probably some form of hell right now.
Yeah.
So, but that was my day. So I think that's a great segue to get right into talking about combat sports.
Yeah, for sure.
She punched me. That's the whole link right there.
You got socked. Where did she hit you at?
Oh, right in the shoulder. But, I mean, I'm a big guy. So, but I was that's the one thing I was really impressed. She knew how to throw. She threw a hard punch for a mentally imbalanced homeless lady on the street. So
that'll teach you to hit the crosswalk button.
I know. I'm sorry. Did not know this crosswalk was off limits.
Well, you'll ask next time.
Yeah, I'm sure will.
All right. So that's going to take us right into episode 252. And we are going to start with antitrust stuff like we always do. But today's question is a little bit different because earlier this afternoon, as we record this on Monday night, May 18th, 2026, earlier this afternoon was a status conference for the UFC antitrust cases that took place, and it was regarding the spoliation of evidence, of discovery. What did we learn from the proceedings?
Well, the proceedings happened was an all-day proceedings. I believe they ended around 4:30, so not too long ago. I contacted some people. I'm trying to get Alessandro Gelke, who was at the last one. He was at this one as well, to come on the show. I think tomorrow I'll record him for paid subscribers to get a better details of today's proceeding. But I have some updates of some of the stuff that happened, some comments, and I also have one filing this week that we can discuss as well. But here are the quotes I was getting from what supposedly Judge Boulware said this was given to me during the breaks and after the sessions. They might not be 100% accurate quotes, but this is what the messages I was sent about what was going on in the status conference, which was mostly about, as you mentioned, the spoliation props with that the UFC had lost a ton of material and that they had brought in experts to go over their phones. So according to them, Judge Boulware, this is a quote from him directly. He said there was a staggering amount of messages missing, up to 1 million, concerns the court, that the lawyers defending their clients said Ari Emanuel never used Signal for UFC business. If people remember, we talked about this a week ago, I believe. There was in part of the WWE lawsuit, Ari Emanuel was kind of busted using Signal with Vince McMahon, but then deleting it. The messages or the app. Not sure what. The judge replied to that he never used it for UFC business. The judge replied, "Why should I believe that?" He then went on when asked he got, I guess, more comments. Here's some more comments. An incredible pattern of destruction, according to the judge. He said that apps on the phone that weren't disclosed, they should have been disclosed a year ago. He brought up that the defense the defense was trying to say any phones would have gaps of missing messages because there are updates. And then the judge had a comment that it was a reckless disregard for evidence. It doesn't sound like it went particularly well for the UFC during that entire session, today's hearing. That was today's hearing. Now, again, we'll have Gelke on to give us better coverage tomorrow, hopefully, to go over the full details, what actually happened. The other one I thought was interesting and I missed was I guess White did have an Apple ID. He said he didn't know if he did. And that one of White's phones, which had been wiped, was called Holo's phone. Holo's iPhone. Remember, Holo is the company that was hired to go over the discovery material, the forensic company, to hold it. So was it named? I don't know did they name it because it didn't have a name? Did they name it for that company because they knew they're going to hand it over to him? I'm not certain. And so we have that. And then in addition, we have a filing. And that filing was filed last Friday. And that is the plaintiffs are asking the court to enforce prior orders on the third party, which is Dominance MMA, in civil contempt for repeatedly failing to comply with discovery demands and court mandates. They have failed to produce ordered documents, according to the plaintiffs. They're in violation. Dominance has missed the deadline, producing only 1,438 documents as of April 3rd, and an additional 558 documents nearly 2 weeks later. So that represents 2% of what the court had ordered. And so they're conducting an unauthorized linear review. And then they have failed to preserve evidence. So that's the complaint. The remedies requested by the plaintiffs are compelling Dominance to completely produce all remaining non-privileged documents collected by Holo, the name of Dana White's phone, apparently, ordering dominance to immediately cease its unauthorized linear relevance review, finding dominance in continuing contempt of court under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 45G, and requiring dominance to pay all reasonable attorney's fees and costs incurred by the plaintiff since April 2, 2026. So that'd be added onto the previous bill due to dominance's noncompliance. So that is the big updates from the Vegas courtroom of Judge Boulware.
Wow. And so what happens next in these cases? When's, what is the next big thing?
Well, they have some dates already scheduled. There's a hearing coming up June 3rd. I'm not 100% what's going to happen on that hearing since I wasn't there today. They also had them block 3 days off from June 29th to August 1. So that sounds like something big. And so that sounds like that might be the finale of this spoliation issue, if I had to take a guess, is going to happen on that 3-day block, 29th to the 1st. So I might have to take some time off and head to Vegas right in summer too. God damn it.
Well, I am looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to hearing from Alessandro Gelke. So, folks, make sure you're tuning in over the next couple of days because we will have some more content coming out on this status conference. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to start our coverage of the MVP MMA card that took place this past Saturday night, Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano card. So this happened, it went down, and by all accounts was a roaring success. But what did you think of it?
I mean, it was a mess. It was a terrible event. If you want elite level, top level, relevant fights, it didn't provide that. It had a lot of over the hill fighters and sloppy bouts, but also that's exactly, I think, what the audience wanted. And I have to be honest, as again, non-dramatic as the fights were, as non-relevant as they were, I could see as a fan being pretty satisfied with what you got. You got exactly what probably a lot of people wanted to see. You got a couple decent fights on the undercard. You got, it's sad that it's Junior Dos Santos, but you got a knockout of a heavyweight. You got Francis Ngannou looking scary as hell. You have just no. Is it a technical masterpiece? No. Is it even technically qualifies as a decent fight? Probably no. But a bloody mess that was, to more casuals, probably incredibly entertaining with Perry versus Diaz. And then the if you know anything about MMA, are you really shocked at how the main event went? No. But so for the event itself, I'm sure. Again, I'm not the audience for this, really. This is not the type of fights I get super excited for, but as just having on the TV, it was fun. But I know my casual friends seem to like it a lot, even when they laughed at it and laughed at some of the parts of it. They obviously were enjoying it. And at the same time, too, I think the production is hit and miss because some of the production elements were amazing. Other things could probably need some work.
I thought the production was pretty goddamn good, considering that we have been force-fed the same stale product from the UFC for literal decades now. And so I was pretty impressed with the production myself. I will say, I think the arena looked amazing. Mm-hmm. The cameras were, for the most part, great. The sound could need some work. I know people are like, oh, there's no one in the audience. No, there were people. The mics they should have mics ready to pick up more audience when people were walking in. But my biggest problem was I've been in the past of like Mario Ronaldo, but he was not great. I thought the desk, the people they brought on, like actually, a lot of people like Hawani had a lot of people, I saw a lot of complaints, but that's because a lot of people on Twitter and X don't like Hawani. But I think they used him too much. They have to, Rob Joyner at this point, I think he's correct. You have to use one or the other. He's either interviewing people or he's at the desk. You can't have him do everything. And then some of the conversations at the desk were a little silly at times. So, but, I also didn't like the LED lights because they obscured the people that were actually in the seats, and it made a lot of people think that the arena was empty when it was actually about 90% full.
Yeah, that's true, but it did give it a nice look, and it probably helped for earlier in the card when there was much less people there. My understanding was that the card definitely it was a late show. That it's through the main event when people started coming. It's not like, how MMA shows used to be in the past where people showed up at the very beginning. And so it probably helped in the beginning of the card when it got to Netflix. But you're right. It's at the end, maybe when they got to the main event, they could have done something with the lights to dim them so you could see how full it really was.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, I love the displays behind the fighters when they were walking out. That looked really cool. And as far as the fights go, I'll tell you what was impressive to me. Saladin Parnasse. Man, oh man, that dude is
body shots.
He is something else. They need to lock him down to a contract. Otherwise, UFC is probably going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah, I just don't know what they have to offer him himself. I mean, it was what do you think of the main card? What do you think of the main card fights?
For what they were, the solid entertainment. I wasn't thrilled watching Junior Dos Santos get absolutely slept. Like he got melted. But
I'm sure the audience that tunes into that's exactly what they wanted to see.
Sure, absolutely. I wasn't thrilled seeing Felipe Lins coming up from light heavyweight. I know he's fought at heavyweight before, but I think he had dropped down to light heavy and then came up for this fight with Francis Ngannou. But, the size disparity was obvious. And although he put up a valiant effort to, stay in the game, I mean, it was only a matter of time. I was literally sitting there watching the timer and thinking to myself, any second now. And sure enough, he got clapped hard. It was just scary.
The one compliment I'll give Ngannou on that, because it was a mismatch, and it was there's levels to this thing. Ngannou's at the very, very elite level heavyweight, and other people are just not at that level or near to that level. But the way I give Ngannou credit is he was very, he was very conservative way to make sure he didn't make any mistakes. And I thought that was smart. You haven't fought for a while, and the risk is you're going to look bad.
Yeah.
And so it's like, instead of he was very controlled in all of his actions. And I thought that you just tell he was fighting a very smart fight. Like, sooner or later, I'm winning this fight, and I'm not going to risk it.
And he did a great job. It was just scary watching what he did to Lins. I mean, that was scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I give him a lot of credit for not falling up. That was the best part.
Me too. Yeah. He pulled his punch really quick because he was going back in there. And as soon as he saw what he'd done, he just stepped back. And, I
think he was like he was horrified by what he'd done. He felt bad. Like, what did I do to this guy?
Yeah, for sure. Now, let me ask you this. Being that the house was about 90% full, and this was reported by credible reporters too. Casey Layden, Alex Behunin, Josh Gross, they were all there. Andreas Hale, all of them were there. So I trust their reporting when they say that the arena was about 90% full. I mean, when the main card started, Alex Behunin said it was already 80% full, and that was with 5 fights to go. So with several fights to go, 5 fights to go, it was 80% full. And I believe he said when he got there, and I don't know if he was there from the beginning, that there were quite a few people there from when he got there. And Andreas Hale said basically the same thing. So I feel like it was maybe a better crowd than what UFC would normally see, where people don't start showing up until, the last couple of fights. This seemed to be a little bit different. So bearing that in mind, that we got, at minimum, a 90% full house for the final fight or two, does that sound like it might have been profitable at the gate?
Well, the gate's just a very tiny portion of the revenue this event's making. So, gate's not going to cover really any expenses. It's going to cover some of the production costs. But, you look at the ticket prices, which they lowered at the end. And that's one way we know that they had, probably 90% or so full tickets, because I know some people were monitoring Ticketmaster and the available tickets, watching them go at the last second, people getting them as they discounted them, which suggests they probably they had too high a price on the tickets, even though it was more modestly priced than the UFC. So, by all accounts, when we get the gate numbers, which California should release, we'll see. I'm guessing it's going to be over $1 million, but maybe 2 million, which is, for a non-UFC event, successful. I mean, compared to UFC, that's not that impressive of gate. But thing to remember too, and I've talked about this for years, Ronda Rousey, when you look at her traditionally, except for what she did in Australia, because that was like the first big event the UFC did in Australia, her gates were never massive. She was not a live ticket seller. She was a massive pay-per-view TV audience kind of broadcast person. And I think that maybe played something in here as well, that's her type of audience that, comes, that the what she draws are not the typical or the big spender whales of MMA are not coming to her events as much as more casual fans, more regular people. And so that could be one reason for the ticket sales to be where they're at. But, again, this was a Netflix event. The success is going to be dependent on how many viewers they got on Netflix, how many subscribers, there's some inkling that seems to be successful. Gate wise, this is, if it was a different fighter, this would be tremendously disappointing. If this was Fedor Emelianenko back in the day, this would probably, considering how the industry's changed, this would probably be disappointing because he was a big ticket seller. Ronda traditionally has not been as big a ticket seller. So, but I think overall they got the audience, the minimum they needed at the gate. And so they're happy with it. The one problem is it just, it didn't look as full as they thought it did, or people are comparing it to the UFC that does, ridiculous gates nowadays. So it's a hard thing to be compared to.
But their ridiculous gates that they're doing don't always end up sellouts. It's just because they've been jacking up the prices so high. Some seats are going for $5,000 at the pay-per-view. at the numbered events.
Yeah, I'm sure MVP wish they could sell their tickets for that, and collect millions and millions and millions of dollars just at the gate. Yeah. But it's a different market. But what they sold, I think they're happy with the event they had. It wasn't, I'm not going to say it's a failure. It's not, it just doesn't do they can't price it like it was a UFC event.
Sure.
And it's understandable too, because as a spectacle, as a freak show, a bunch of, again, not to be mean, not to be derogatory, over the hill fighters, and Francis Ngannou is the only legitimate elite level in a complete mismatch. It's not the type of fight that the huge fans are going to I am paying, they're going to be super excited to see. It's the type of fight that people at home that are more casual are going to go, holy shit, I remember those guys. I'm going to watch that. And that's this kind of event they had. Not huge at the gate at the ticket sales, but probably a very large audience on broadcast, I should know.
What did you think of the timing of Dana White's Conor McGregor fight announcement? And what did you think of the way that he put it out on his personal Instagram rather than through an official UFC channel, or maybe during last weekend's pay-per-view? What the hell was that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Francis Ngannou's comment when they asked about what the fuck do I care? I personally didn't. I didn't care because I didn't even pay attention to it, really. I saw on X that some people were talking about, there's a big announcement on Conor. But I don't know what the reasoning behind it, because what did they think the Conor McGregor excitement was so high still that people would just suddenly forget about this card and just start talking about that? I don't think he has that, he's still the biggest star probably in MMA, but I don't think the enthusiasm for him doesn't seem to be quite there as it used to be. Again, with the big event like Conor McGregor announcement, I think you and other people are right that you've probably been better off announcing it like at the pay-per-view or some event or something where people maybe are going to be paying attention more to you, because one of the problems is they might hear about the Conor McGregor announcement and go, "Oh, that's great," but then like, okay, now go back. I got to go back to watching, Francis melt this poor guy that shouldn't be in the cage with them.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think that was some very, very petty shit.
Oh, I can't read Dana White's mind, but if I could, I'm pretty sure I would read it. What he'd be saying in his mind is some petty shit. So it seems likely that he released it, just, somewhat send a message, but a terrible message sent because it didn't really work.
It didn't. And we looked at some Google Trends that showed Conor below pretty much everyone that mattered on that card, because they measured Gina Carano, Nate Diaz, Francis Ngannou, and Ronda Rousey against Conor McGregor's search queries. And Conor was at the, really low. It was Conor, then Francis, and then it was Gina, and then Nate and Ronda. Nate and Ronda were like neck and neck. Yeah. But Conor was actually below Francis as far as search queries.
I don't know if there's been a change in the way the media works with social media, the way the public digests this stuff, is maybe if that robbed the interest in it. But I do think, based on all the previous time that they've announced fights, I don't remember less talk, less, chat on social media or on the talk shows about Conor's return for a fight than what we just got. Because all the other ones, there would be like a whole special episode for all the junkie shows and the MMA Hour, and it would be a super important subject for the MMA sphere for that week. All the sites, all the chatter from the fans. That's all it'd be about. And looking through social media, I didn't look through it much today. My X account or Twitter account, whatever the F it's called, I went through a little bit, but I saw very little Conor discussion, McGregor discussion at all.
Yeah.
And all discussion still was about MVP and a few other things, but that was the major discussion, which is also kind of shocking. He's fighting Max Holloway, which is a major star. And I did seem to notice that the majority of the comments, I think, were more about Max Holloway than they were about Conor McGregor. So I don't want to read too much into it, because we are living in a radically changing media landscape and I remember this several years ago when we talked about this, where there was no interest in an event until the week of the event. And that started to be the way they would promote pay-per-views, was that they would not spend that much energy in promoting the event in the big lead up like they did with the world tours and these massive promotional efforts, because they realized people's attention spans weren't there, that they just throw all the effort in the last week to get people alerted to the event that week. So that was a change. And maybe we're in another change where just, that people just, Conor McGregor, there might be a lot of interest for the event when we get closer, but just his announcements no longer draw the interest of a large number of fans. We do not see the chatter after this fight announcement as we did previously.
Two things. One, I still don't think Conor McGregor is going to fight. I'm
not taking that bet with you. I'm not taking that bet.
I feel like another injury is going to crop up or something. I just honestly don't feel like he's going to fight. And if he does, I'll have to eat crow. But from where I'm sitting, I'm just waiting on some injury to be announced. And two, regarding Conor McGregor fight announcements not carrying much weight anymore, one thing that I have noticed, and I've tweeted about it multiple times over the past year and a half, 2 years, is that Conor McGregor's social media doesn't carry much weight anymore. Where once he would tweet and 100,000 likes would end up, several tens of thousands of retweets, several thousand replies. These days, he's lucky if he hits 10, 15,000, 20,000 likes a couple thousand retweets, if that. Most of the time it's in the hundreds now as far as retweets go. And, only the most depraved people are in there in the replies supporting him. And most of the replies are people just absolutely trashing him. So his social media doesn't even carry the weight that it once did. And I think that it's a combination of all the terrible things that he's done, the losses, the long layoff, and just the constant shit talking with nothing to back it up with.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not sold he's going to appear either. I think Kavanaugh had a message on social media, I don't know which platform, talking about disappointed that they announced the fight like the day after he booked his vacation. It sounded like he was talking about McGregor, not himself. Which should be fitting that McGregor's planning on a vacation instead of fighting. But yeah, I mean, I think it's natural for a guy that's been losing, for having all these problems outside the cage and acting bizarre and not having fought for a while, that interest has maybe waned on him. But I still think, he's still a star.
Yeah.
Compared to everybody else in the sport. It could be sad to say, because I think he's probably in the same boat as Nate Diaz at this point. But there'll still be probably, when we get to fight time, there'll probably be a lot of interest in it. I'm just doubtful there'll be as much interest in his next fight as there was as his previous ones. That I think that level of interest has faded.
For sure. Now, Nikisa Badarian said that MVP has plans to do another MMA event by year's end. What are your thoughts on that?
Another one by year's end? That's good news. I think that's a sign that they did good. That the gate, obviously, we talked about, was not massive, but that was successful enough for them promotion. But the big thing that tells me is, if it's true that they plan on doing this, now maybe he's just talking and Netflix has not given him word. But if they do end up doing another one, I think that's a sure sign that they view this as a success. And and the question is, can they put a fight card together? Because can they put a fight card together specifically that's interesting enough for Netflix to pay for it? Because if they don't work with Netflix, I'm not certain which other broadcaster will pay enough to put on large, top notch is misleading, big name cards. Sure. Let's put it that way, big name cards. But I think that's great news for them if they really are going to go ahead and put on another one. And that sounds smart too, because, a lot of people are like, oh, they got to put on, they got to make a whole promotional entity and do all this stuff. No, I think the smart thing for them right now is to just put on the occasional cards when they show up, right? To basically what Jake Paul was doing with his boxing career. When I can put on a spectacle that can make money, I'll do that. I think they should have the same approach for MMA for the most part. There's, they can have their own contender series, whatever, but for the most part, it should be focused on primarily on, if I have a product I can do, then I can offer to Netflix, and Netflix can pay the big fee for it. Cover all our costs and take away the risk and pay everybody a ton of money.
I don't mind 2 or 3 events a year. I think that they could probably turn that out. I don't think that there's a lot of optimists out there that seem to think that they're going to eventually be in a position to really challenge UFC. And I have been educated by you, because there's no way they can do that.
They're not. Yeah, the fighters aren't. And again, we should get into this, because this kind of drives me nuts on, again, social media, motherfucking people on social media. Saying stuff without really thinking it through. Their big discussion, how can they compete if they don't have a ton of cards? They have to build up their roster from the bottom up, and all these arguments they make. Well, that's how they'd fail, and that's the problem every other promotion does. Every other promotion tries to be the Pepsi Cola to the UFC's Coca-Cola. They want to be a league, and they want to put on cards that are just content, and they expect people to tune into these cards that are just content because it's MMA, or because they claim it's quality MMA. And the fans, the fans are not or either they're more sophisticated and realize you're lying, or they're not that sophisticated and can't distinguish that you're high quality MMA, because the way fans have been conditioned over decades now to understand what high quality MMA is, it's the UFC, because the UFC has all the top fighters. And until your fighters can fight the UFC guys, why they're recognized as the best in the world, beat them or sign fighters that are still considered top in the UFC and bring them over to your promotion, fans are not going to consider that elite level. So you are not going to compete with the UFC at elite level MMA. And there's not enough interest in either just anything MMA, just, content MMA, where it's just like, I'm tuning in just because there's someone fighting. You might get a small audience for that, but that's not motive enough to get a large enough crowd audience to make it profitable, that just to tune in for, basically glorified, I shouldn't say bump fights, because these could be the most skilled fighters in the world, but no name fighter MMA, no one wants that.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!